welcome to On the House, the podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and video games, and Runaway Infinity Train Never Look Back. I'm going to spare you guys me singing more of the song there, so you're welcome.
I didn't even catch the reference, but...
The song Runaway Train, was a huge hit in the 90s.
But we're here today to talk about the last, for now, season of Infinity Train.
Yes, and this one's definitely took kind of a different approach to the other ones. It's a prequel, as in it's set prior to the other episode, so there's actually very little that ties it into the previous seasons.
Well, there is, but it's kind of in the background. And I think they gave this specifically takes place in 86, whereas season 1 took place in contemporary 2019.
Yeah, sounds about right, just with some of the references they were making throughout.
Mm-hmm. But this is the story of Ryan and Min, two young Asian Canadians in the mid-80s who have aspirations of being a musician. Well, Ryan does, whereas Min has very strict parents who want him to get into finance. Ryan tries to convince him to come to New York to perform with him, but he tries to lure him there, but they both get on the train at the same time, which is a new feat. And they meet a sentient concierge belle named Kez, who tries to help them get their numbers down, and she also wants to take them back to meet her roommate.
Which I will just say now, the twist with the roommate, I did not see that coming. Yeah, overall, I thought it was an interesting angle to take, making it two human characters for this one. That's definitely the first time we've seen it, and the fact that their numbers are linked, definitely, it adds a twist to it because it takes them a bit longer than it does the other characters to kind of figure out this is how the numbers work, this is how we get it down situation, you know?
Mm-hmm. Though I kind of found it neat how in the first 3 seasons, everything that was happening was basically a result of an unusual circumstance for the train and universe, whereas this is the only season where the characters are told straight up what to do, and it's in a way a standard journey on what the train should be
Yeah, because even with the stuff that changes, because you definitely see some stuff that's used to set up season 1 towards the end of this, it doesn't really impact the characters' arc at all.
It's not even a subplot, it's the background plot, basically.
Yeah, it's third tier plot, if anything.
Which, again, as the newbie, what were your thoughts?
I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy this season quite as much as the other 3. I feel like since it was a simpler story, I just wasn't as invested in it in this particular one as I was the other ones. Plus, I've kind of seen the story of one guy kind of stays home and one guy goes to pursue his dreams, and they kind of re-meet, trying to reconnect. I've kind of seen that story done before, so it just didn't feel as fresh for me. But in terms of this type of story, I think they told it very well. It just didn't stand out to me the way the previous 3 seasons did. And also, I'll be honest, part of my issues with this season might have been that I did find one particular character kind of annoying. I'll let you take a wild guess on who that character was.
I will say, I liked how... what was I going to say? Crap, I hate when I lose my train of thought. I just made a pun there, train of thought.
You lost his train of thought, folks.
I know there's going to be something about the characters, but... oh, crap.
But anyways, while you're regaining your train of thought, I'll just say the character of Kez, there's a fine line for me between those characters that you're supposed to find annoying but lovable. And for me, she landed just on the other side of that line, where I didn't hate her character, but the annoying parts, they did start to annoy me a little bit as well.
Well, actually, when I looked at like the TV tropes page for like the characters, like I actually found a perspective that because it's a smaller stake story, they consider Kez to technically be the villain of the season in a way. A more indirect example, though.
I don't think I would call her a villain per se.
More like
I can definitely see why someone would make that comparison.
Like she's the source of the problem, even if she's not being intentionally malicious. Because the gimmick is like every car they passed through, she had done something to piss off the denizens there. Like even though she wasn't trying to hurt them, she just made things worse. And you're just each car like the denizens are teaming up to go after these three.
Yeah, she definitely makes the journey more difficult for our main characters.
The thing I remember was going to say is I can appreciate how after season 3 they didn't want to just double down even more on the darkness. Like this is probably the most lighthearted story of the 4.
Yeah, definitely. Though it's definitely, with that being said, it's kind of a return to the humor of the previous seasons. Like, I don't think, for us, speaking of what our favorite train was and favorite jokes, were kind of an afterthought on the last episode, just because it so much wasn't the focus. But here I would say comedy definitely returns. So that being said, what were your favorite trains in this one?
Let's see. I like the first car they were in where the gimmick of this thermostat that changes the time period.
Yeah, that was definitely a neat idea that they definitely play with throughout the series.
And also, I'm sure you all understand about this season, even though it was the most lighthearted, it probably had the individual most freaky car.
I would definitely, you could definitely make a strong argument for that one creature being up there for creepiest thing that's been on this show.
Like the whole art gallery car where there's this like shadow monster that turns to be like made out of arms of passengers. Which I honestly wonder if that would have come back in a later season, because that seems like such an extreme thing to just be a one-off.
For me, it was almost like, it's like, okay, we don't have much dark stuff in this. We're going to put it all in this one design here. As for me, my favorite car was probably the Old West car, just because I'm a huge fan of Westerns. And for favorite joke, I gotta go with towards the end, they kind of like they do a bouncer character wrong. And then later on, he's blocking like an entrance to somewhere they need to get. And it's like they fool him again to get past him. And he's just kind of standing there all smug. And then like the character doesn't speak, but just his body emotions were just like, shit, I let him trick me again.
And also in the Old West car, another joke I liked was when they see the cat there, who she's the only character to be in all 4 seasons. And like, because they need to hide from the law, Ryan tries flirting with the cat. And when Min asks, why did you do that? And Kez says, I don't know, man. She does look kind of hot.
Well, she was Miss Kitty in this episode.
Yeah, I wonder if that was a homage. I honestly do.
I kept waiting for them to make a reference to it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like a Bible Goes West reference would have been neat.
Well, Miss Kitty's actually a reference to an old Western show called Gunsmoke. So that was actually Fievel Goes West was making a reference to that, but
yeah. And I like the car that the final 3 episodes took place in.
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of the cast. Spoilers, 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 spoilers. This is season 4. You've either watched it or you've not at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that her best friend ended up being a castle that was sentient was like really a good twist. And that being said, you still learn about the human character that you're misled to believe he's talking about originally.
Yeah, she shows a picture early on, and it's her, a human, like, and a castle in between them, and you think, it's my roommate Morgan, and because the guy's a guy, and Morgan's is like a gender neutral name, so I mean, I did not catch that on my first time through it. It got me, like,
Yeah, it legit got me. I'll say this: the show, it's pretty good with its twist and not being so blatantly obvious that you see them coming.
and I also like how, even though we never see the human passenger in person, he is given a backstory and some tragic layers to it, which is something I was worried this season would have been lacking, but they managed to include.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy that. You basically got his entire arc without ever meeting the character.
And I did like that moment where they like point out how the journal entries cut off, and like they know Kez did something, and for a minute you're led to believe, like, did she accidentally kill him or something? But
which, with Kez being responsible for a couple deaths, would not have surprised me.
Though it just turns out, like, she had accidentally helped his number get to 0 when he didn't want to leave because he was happy with the castle and Kez, but when his portal opened, he just wanted to peek but got sucked through. Which, I mean, that's a neat take, that just being content with your life on the train and not feeling a need to go back without being destructive like the Apex kids were.
Because, yeah, it does definitely raise some questions of, like, after 5 years, would you want to go back even, you know?
And also, J.K. Simmons as a giant pig baby in this season.
J.K. Simmons shows up in a lot of shows. That surprises me.
Though I like the gimmick into like the final episodes where they use the like time thermostat to turn him to pig toddler.
Oh, I will say another one of my favorite jokes is they're making fun of American food.
Yeah, which is apparently that's an actual thing and not just a weird joke they made.
Yeah,
like post-war American food.
Yeah, and it's they're like, the main characters are Canadian, so you're just kind of thinking, okay, it's border rivalry joke there, not thinking too much of it. And then later on, like the surrogate mother character for Pig Baby is like, no, he does not like that stinky colonial American food. That is just the only book that was not burnt in the fire. I would like to apologize to the people of France for my terrible accent. I will not be doing that again.
Yeah. And I know this is ultimately subjective, and the creator didn't say either way, but did you think by the end they were implying like Ryan and Min might have started to be a little more than just friends?
I didn't personally. Just, I took it as they're friends and just have a very strong bond to it. But if the creator were to come out and say, no, I intended it like this, then I wouldn't have been shocked by it, you know? But yeah, just from my own personal read, I just took it as them being very close.
Especially because they were talking about earlier about how they were worried they wouldn't be accepted because, like, how back then there weren't a lot of Asian mainstream musicians. I thought they would have been further with the subtext than that.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where if somebody reads that into it, I mean, I could definitely see how they could get there. It's just not what my personal interpretation was, you know?
I mean, I'd believe either one. And I have to say, since the main characters were musicians, I would have been disappointed if the season didn't end on a song, but it thankfully did have one.
Quite catchy one, too, I might add.
Yeah, I wish there would have been an extended version released on the soundtrack, but
maybe someday.
But as for like I guess we did already kind of spoil stuff with like the identity of the castle and the Jeremy, the human pastor. But also in terms of spoilers, what we alluded to earlier, this is like the start of Amelia's takeover of the train.
Which it does raise some questions because when you initially see her, she's like working with 1-1.
And like 1-1 is a different entity. Like he's a more serious, like stern. Like he's clearly something happened to him to make the character we saw in season 1 and 2.
Yeah, you don't get the sad one and happy one. It's just one.
Which I learned that apparently inspiration for the entire series was that 80s like Adventures of Mark Twain movie. Did you ever hear that?
I'm trying to remember if I've seen that movie or not.
Well, it's claymation, and it has one extremely freaky sequence that a lot of people remember in isolation.
Oh, you mean that?
Yeah, and actually, the musical jingle they play at every episode, that's actually taken from that scene.
Really?
Yeah, it served as an inspiration for the show.
Yeah. Well, that's a twist I did not see coming. Like, I'm not sure if I've seen The Adventures of Mark Twain or if I've just heard about that clip so much I feel like I have, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, might make a good episode later.
So, between the two leads, did you like either Ryan or Min more, or were they about equal?
About the same. I mean, just it's kind of the one I kind of felt like I connected with more, but as a result, I kind of like the other one a little bit more, or if that makes sense, just because I didn't see as much of myself in them.
I kind of like on a meta level how there was a sort of small twist where by the final episode, it's Min, the one who just has constant pressure and trying to be strict, who's mostly solved things, whereas the more free spirited Ryan is going all despair. But
yeah, they definitely do some fun stuff with their characters throughout, but like I said,
and since like this season takes place before like all the other main protagonists are born, it would be a neat Easter egg in future seasons if we like see some of their like albums on the walls. Or
I was actually just thinking that like I would be curious to rewatch it and see if a character's poster or something was in the background, you know?
then I was thinking more like they would do that for like a later character, but since they would probably be like in their 50s by the time of the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, very true.
And I gotta say, like, I kind of like Kez more than you did. I understood, like, because at least they made it clear that in universe everyone was annoyed by her, and in the final episode, it's her who has to apologize to everyone she's pissed off.
Like, don't get me wrong, I didn't hate the character. She was just there's a line between annoying but funny and funny but annoying. And she was just on the annoying but funny side for me. If that makes sense.
And I liked that bit at the end where just as they're about to head back to the world, like Ryan he has to ring the bell. He has to know.
I did get a good kick out of that.
I briefly thought was something was he gonna get a shock or something, but no, he just rings it successfully. And there's also a neat touch in regards to this season being a prequel that apparently Kez is the name of an oldies radio station.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And even though it's a prequel, it doesn't do the Final Destination 5 thing where it's clear from the first episode this takes place in the past.
Yeah, it's very much established early on as opposed to the twist.
Mm-hmm. And I like the bit where you see the Stewart robot and you can hear both Amelia and one's voices. Apparently they're working in tandem, but by the final episode, Amelia's taken over, which it's been confirmed that season 5 was completely written and it would have been the Amelia focused prequel.
Mm-hmm. Which hopefully we'll still get to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, with HBO Max now internationally launched, the show's fan base can expand even further.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, final thoughts on this season?
Well, I would say this is my least favorite of the 4 seasons. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not. It's just the show set such a high standard for itself that it didn't quite reach the peaks of the other ones for me.
I mean, I want to be able to say a season like this is my least favorite of anything. That's something that still entertains me a lot.
Yep, totally true. Totally true. Mm-hmm. So, if you're a fan of this series, I definitely would say watch it. It's you're not going to regret watching it. It just doesn't quite pack the punch as the other ones, but overall, I definitely enjoyed it.
Same here, and even if the fate of the show is up in the air, I'm glad the final episode will for sure get to see goes out on a positive note, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. And here's hoping that in maybe a year or so, we're talking about season 5.
Yeah.
Or however long it takes them to release these episodes. I don't know. Why are you asking me these questions? But folks, we want to thank you once again for joining us on the Infinity Train. As always, I've been Clancy, and thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Don't mention it, man. I'm glad I was able to introduce you to the show. All the weeks and months of pestering you finally paid off.
Well, to be fair, it usually takes you a good 6 months of pestering me to watch something, and then 20 minutes into watching it, I'm like, yeah, I should have watched this a whole lot sooner. I should just learn to listen to Dave, folks, is the moral of the story.
I mean, we should definitely finally do People Under the Stairs, Perfect Getaway, or Identity next.
Yeah, definitely. But folks, we'll see you next time when we cover something not Infinity Train related. Take care of yourselves.
Bye.